Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erwan Nishvire. I am a filmmaker myself, and I will be moderating today's session of This is not a burial, but a resurrection. I will introduce the film first, and then we will go straight into the trailer. This is not a burial, it's a resurrection. Is set in a landlocked Lesotho, a beautiful water-rich country which supplies water to a thirsty South Africa in what is Africa's largest water transfer scheme. This comes at an enormous cost to the villagers and subsistence farmers of Lesotho because as more reservoirs are constructed, thousands of people are forcibly removed from their land and resettled in urban areas. They not only lose their livestock, crops, and way of life, but also their individual and collective identity. In his feature film debut, director Lemogang Jeremiah Mosese explores these issues of displacement and loss. We will go straight into the trailer, and then after this, I will introduce the panel, and then we go straight into the discussion.
Bari ha o ka thea tsebe mobung wa Nazareta o tla ikutlwela dillo le ditshebo tsa bafu ba nyametse ke dihohola meya ya bona e hua botibong.
Good afternoon again, everyone. I am Elirwani, and I will be introducing today's speakers. What's happening now is this is not a burial, it's a resurrection, media junket. Next to me right now is actor Silas Minyatsi, and we have Mahaula Ndebele, who's one of the actors, and we have our Lisiba player, Ndade Jerry Mufukeng Wamaketa, and our producer, and the producer, Kate Panzengrove of Uruku Media. And just to kick off this discussion, sorry about that. And we have our amazing director, Lemogang Jeremiah Mosese, who's joining us all the way from Berlin. Hi, Lemogang.
Hello, how are you guys? Thank you for having us.
Thank you. You're right. You're right. And just to kick off this discussion, we will start off with Kate. I believe you're going to tell us about the process and the logistics of making this film happen all the way from Lesotho.
Yeah, it was quite a journey to put the film together just because Lesotho has, its film industry is really in its infancy. And so in terms of resources available to us, there really weren't a lot of resources. And so I had to bring a lot over the border. in terms of crew members. Some of our amazing actors are South African, and yeah, we were in the mountains, very isolated, sometimes without hot water, a lot of cold showers, limited access to electricity. We had a generator that ran just for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening so that we could eat and also charge our camera batteries. But I think I can speak for everyone when I say that being that isolated and being in the mountains and the highlands was really a beautiful experience and almost a spiritual one. And we shot in the village of Hadini Zulu, and the community there was so warm and welcoming. And I mean, we essentially took over their home for 4 weeks, and they were nothing but kind, and many of them feature in the film. So all in all, it was a tough experience. The nature was not very kind to us all the time. We shot through many electrical storms. Vehicles broke down on a daily basis. There weren't any roads in the mountains, so Mameri often had to be transported on horseback or by strong members of our crew who would carry her over mountains or through rivers. And she was just a gladiator throughout the whole thing. There was nothing that woman said no to. And I'm sure we'll talk more about her later, but I just want to just take a moment to honor Mary and proclaim that she really is and will always be the heart and soul of this film.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think in my conversations that I've had before with you, always emphasize that Mary was there throughout, and the experience you shared with her, it's quite remarkable. And I really commend you and the crew for the work that you've done, because I feel when you watch the film, the passion does come through. And when you get to know what it took to make that film, it's just so overwhelming and beautiful to watch. Cool, cool. And then we're gonna move to Lemohang. If you can share the inspiration of this film and what you imagined before you brought this film to life, just your process as well. But what was your inspiration and what you imagined before you brought this to life?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I would like to think of this film as a sort of a stream of ideas. That there was no one particular idea that it's bigger than the other. They were all sort of equal ideas of whether it's about this exodus of farmers now who are living in the mountains and relying on the land itself for their livelihood, now moving to the outskirts of the city or in the heart of the city, where they cannot even keep the livestock or even survive, or also was dealing with a lot about time, about the existence of time, within the space we exist in, this wheel of time, the wheel that is sort of, it's almost like it's marching, independent of us. It's matching. It's very much of we are coexisting within it, or maybe it's totally indifferent. So I was sort of interrogating these ideas, and also I wanted to have a lot of reference to Earth itself. And there's a lot of motifs about the high and below, about the dark and the light, about God, and also about the death itself, whether it's rebirth or whether it's death. There's always this motifs of this, whether it's about the industry or whether it's about the tradition, where the earth itself, where the umbilical cords are buried, where the placentas are buried, and now they erect a big iron industry. So it's this contrast that I was actually going through, this conflicts that I was puzzled with, and also I was very conflicted with. So it's a stream of ideas that I wanted to explore.
So when you finally made that happen, when you finally made the film, did you feel that you were able to achieve these ideas that you were exploring? Because I remember having a chat with Kate, and she said your first cut came up to like about 5 hours, and I can imagine because watching the film, you do feel like it is so layered. So
Yeah.
personally, do you feel like you were able to achieve all these ideas you had been trying to explore before?
Yeah, I think so. Before I used to watch this movie, I think last year and maybe early this year, I was still watching it as a critique. I never watched it as an audience, and I started to watch it as an audience with a couple of friends, and we're just watching it here, and it started to speak with me. It started to. There are things that were done sort of they come from a very subconscious place. I might have had a meaning at that time, but with time, as I watched the movie, it started to speak to me differently. It started to speak different language. I start to see in a different eyes, not as a creator, not as a critique. So I feel like this time that I've been away from the film, it sort of allowed me to understand it even better. Like I said, I create from a very subconscious place. And at times, I don't necessarily want to question or want to bring logic. I don't create from the place of logic. So that means that the ideas mutates. The ideas take their own language. It's not just one idea. It's many ideas that are always mutating. They're always moving. They're not binary. They're very non-binary. They're very fluid. And I think we sort of achieved this. Um, what was the thing that was inspiring for me to create the movement? I wanted something that feels like a sand, like when you see a sand flowing through the hourglass, and this capsule of time and this movement, this slow rhythm, this notes of silence between the notes itself, the silence between the notes itself. And that was sort of motif that I wanted to sort of achieve. And I feel like in this, if you get to this place, this gap between the notes, this silence, that's where the ideas would resonate. Even if it's sort of 150 or 2 hour movie, I feel like the idea, if you become very truthful with the execution, you become truthful to the ideas, they will take care of yourself, or they'll take care of themselves and take care of you as a creator. They will produce a different life than you intended that it would produce. And that's what actually happened with the film. I still get a lot of messages. I get messages from the kid, from a black kid in Iran writing me, a kid from India writing me about what they took totally different things. And that's what I believe about this art form and um, this sort of style or approach or language, that it takes its own life. It's beyond your control as a creator. And in many cases, we have a preconceived ideas about what a film should, how it should mirror certain things about life, or how people should react to it. But I from the beginning wanted to let go. I wanted to let go what I know and approach it and receive it as an amateur, and receive it as a newbie, and stumble upon ideas in the film itself. And I'm still discovering ideas. And I feel like it will take me pretty much my lifetime to get to the matter of the film.
Wow, impressive. I think creating what you just mentioned now, that you don't create from a place of logic, is what makes most of us take different things from the film. I think from all of us who have watched it, we all gonna feel that certain things have stood out for us, but it's not necessarily going to be the same thing. So, with that said, can you please take us through the process, how you got to choose your cinematographer, your camera decisions, and filming and using the format that you chose to go for?
I mean, with the format, I think was my attempt to escape the tyranny of beauty. My country, Lesotho, it's one of the most beautiful countries, I think, in the world. And the fear is that as a creator, when you're creating images in Lesotho, that they can become a very picturesque, and that's what people walk away with. And for me, in my case, I wanted the landscape itself to be the character, and the people, the characters, become landscapes. And one of the things that I was talking to Kate about it was there's a face specific face that I was very drawn to that could bring that landscape. So it was very particular using 3x4 because it's sort of the audience could actually also imagine the landscape if they want to imagine it. It allows them also to complete the other puzzles, and also to focus more on this characters as a landscape and the landscape as a character. It sort of becomes sort of this fluid I was talking about, this fluidity I was talking about. So it was the decision that I already thought about it even before we shot the film, to avoid this tyranny. And also with one of the things that Pierre brought is because he understands shadows and he understands the sun, and that's what in Lesotho there is something very beautiful. It's called seriti, mutunale seriti. It's like a force field. It's something you cannot touch, and I wanted to play with the motif of diriti, or I don't know if maybe the loose translation, which is bad. English is so bad; it doesn't describe this poetic language I wanted to bring, which is Sesotho, in a metaphorical way, like to bring this sort of motifs about the shadow or about the inner person, whether it's the existential crisis or whether it's sort of your inner person or your inner God. I mean, even the idea of God. I'm not talking about in the context of European God, but the inner self, the deep self. And I wanted to have this motif throughout the film, whether it's the spirits, to have these motifs of the light and play a lot with the light and play a lot of the shadows. And I feel like with the collaboration with Pierre, I think was beautiful because he understands exactly the sun. And I was very grateful that Kate recommended Pierre. And then we've been just talking with Pierre throughout the film and seeing our inspiration and sort of finding the common ground, and showing the world I want to paint, because I wanted to treat it as a mosaic of paintings, mosaic of ideas. Like you walk into the cathedral. The film is a cathedral.
As you just mentioning that the film itself is a cathedral, I believe that, or I've seen so many comments on it, and many people have called it that this is more than just a film, it's an art installation. Every frame, it was as if it's a painting, and you can see that it was intentional because all of that does come across when you watch the film. And the format that you chose to go with, I think it's 4x3 or 3x4. I think that's something that I truly loved and appreciated about the film. Thank you for this masterpiece. Sorry. Kate, without any further ado, I will move to Kate, and then you can just go tell us more about your casting process, how you went about that.
I'm very passionate about casting, but there's some material that speaks to me in that I feel like I have to cast it, and other films not. So I don't cast every film I produce, but this was one that was a non-negotiable for me. But it also brought about an opportunity to work with Moonyin Lee, who is just a legend. sadly she passed last year, but she was instrumental in helping me access Mameri and Daddy Jerry and Daddy Machaula. And so Lemoang and I spoke a lot about this idea of mixing experienced actors with real people. And it's something that I really enjoy in my casting process to do, because I think the results that it yields are really powerful. So we had Daddy Jerry, Mameri, and Daddy Machaula come with us from South Africa to Lesotho. In Lesotho, I met some experienced actors like Daddy Silas, Daddy Tseko Monaheng, and some people that have had some acting experience but nothing formal. For example, Spiwe Nzima, who plays Pono. So we cast from that sort of pool of actors in Lesotho, and then pretty much everyone in the village, the little kids and the farmers, Makolo Betsy, who is the elderly, unwell man that Mary's character goes to take care of, we're all real people living in this village on camera for the first time. And I mean, I just think that what the cast achieved and what these people that we collaborated with achieved, and how Lemohang approaches his direction with actors, for me is one of the strongest elements in the film. And to get to work with Mameri was a long time dream of mine. I've admired her for so many years. And she was just, like I said earlier, the heart and soul. Everyone just absolutely adored her. And she was so professional, and she believed so much in what we were doing. I mean, the amount of conversations I had with Mary and Muneen and Mary's family about how treacherous this shoot was going to be for a 79-year-old diabetic chain smoker was extensive. And I mean, every day I was just like, anything can go wrong, but nothing can happen to Mary, because she is just a national treasure. And I remember every evening I would go and check in with my Mary. She would often choose to eat dinner alone in her room. And so I would go and have tea with her and just sort of make sure that she was okay. And often help her rub Voltaren on her latest bump or bruise, because she fell so many times, bless her. And I said, you know, Mary, this is really intense, what we're doing. Like, are you okay? Really? And she said, you know what? I've been in so many films, I've read so many screenplays, I've seen so many films, or I've watched so many films, but I truly see this one. I see it, I know why I'm here, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know what it's going to achieve. And that was so profound for me to have someone of Mary's gravitas to say that after I'd had, I think, a particularly challenging day on set. And she was just always up for anything, and so happy to be there, and so passionate about everything. And I mean, I can say that for everyone that was involved, the crew and the cast, we really went to war together. Like, it was not easy, and I'm so thankful to everyone that was there with. It was crazy enough to come with Lemohang and I to the mountains to make this, and I'm just so proud of what we achieved together.
Wow, the way you speak of her, it's just so amazing, to a point where you feel like she should have gotten, she should have seen this piece, but at the same time, you feel like it's such a fitting swan song. I felt like it was beautiful, and she showed up, just like all the actors that are with us today. I will just take this to Lemohang to elaborate further about your relationship with working with Mary Twala Mhlongo, how that was, and just taking it over from what Kate has already mentioned, but just your relationship with her as a director.
It was really beautiful to to really work with Mary and to be able to, to allow me to direct her the way I wanted to, because I mean, of course, she's sort of used to South African, being South African television, which is a totally different style or different language of creating work. And my approach it's a little different. It's almost like a performance art in a way. And I felt like she gave it all. She surrendered her body for this film to be made. And of course, one of the things that was a bit of a pickle, that was a bit of a challenge, was that I wanted to bring to be very true and authentic to language itself, Sotho language, which for me it's one of the most poetic language I've ever heard, and I wanted to be true to this, but at the same time, Mary speaks a different Sotho, and of course, I had to lose certain battles to win a greater war. There was choices that I had to make. But regardless of this small negotiations that I had to do, she compensated with her body. She compensated all these negotiations that we had to do, or these battles that we had to lose with her body. By just her body, presence of her body became a language. And that was what's one of the things that we intended to do. I intended to actually bring in people was this: the landscape as a character becomes the landscape, not other way around. And this is what Mary would bring to the film. And one of the things that because what I wrote totally different. Someone who was very different, I wrote a character like sort of, it was inspired a lot by my grandmother, by my mother, and this character of this dark skinned woman, and who's sort of this sort of a sculptured body wise. And when Kate sent me Mary a tape with the audition tape, I immediately fell in love with Mary, even if I didn't write exactly the person that looks like her. But the expression, the poetry on her face was everything to me, and was what exactly I was looking for. That I felt like it's someone who can transport my ideas as sort of a canvas.
I believe she did exactly that. She was so fitting. When you watch the film, you just feel like you can't imagine anyone who would have portrayed this role at this particular point or at this particular time. So it really did work, and I feel like you did.
Yeah, and also one of the things that actually even maybe easier, like with it's very rare to have a good, as a director, to have a good relationship with the producer as far as sharing the aesthetics or sharing even a poetry or literature or cinema. So one of the things that made it even more easier, made this very playful as far as we were under the tyranny of weather in Lesotho. I think for the fact that our collaboration with Kate, as far as talking about cinema, talking what inspires us, and also what we like about Mary, we like the same thing that we like about Mary. So it made a journey very, very, very beautiful in a way. As much as we had all difficulties that we had when we were shooting the film, it made things very, very easy. Yeah.
The more one hears about the process and how long the process that it took all of you to make this film, you just feel like everything. It's so it's so fitting. It comes across on screen when you watch it without even knowing the backstory. There's so much into it. The minute you discover the backstory, everything is just like now it makes sense, and that's the beauty of it. You feel the heart that all of you put into making this masterpiece. Before moving on, before I can move on, there were so many few scenes that you shared with Mame Ritwala. What was your experience with her in those sense?
I first met her. I was directing a theater piece, and I about Gibson Kente, and she worked a lot with Gibson Kente, the musical theater director and theater maker of the 50s and 60s. In fact, 60s right up until the 80s. And we wanted to interview her about him, and we had the opportunity to interview her, and that was the first time that I'd met her. And from that experience, I found her to be, she was a very generous spirit in terms of how she gave her time, and she also was generous about the man that she knew. And then in 2019, early Munin calls and says, I want you to read the script. And I said, and she says, I know you're gonna love it. And it's not like anything you've seen. And I'm like, okay. And then I get my sides. It wasn't the whole thing. I get my sides, and she says yes, and you do it in Sesotho. And I was like, yes. And then I went and I did it, and then we got called to the to the taping, to be on tape, and that's where I met Kate. I met Limham, and she was there again. And I always, and then I reminded her, hey, we met before. And then in between the first time we met, I went to the archive center in Pretoria, and I saw one of the movies she'd made with Kente. And I told her about it. She said, wow, it's still around. She didn't know. And then we went into the room, and I'm a very, I, I feel energies, and and I felt relaxed. I felt in tune in that space. And then the thing went well, and we started doing ad-libbing at some scenes, and the director Limhang told us to do different things, and it's the synergy was there, if I can put it like that. And I knew from there that I wanted it to happen. And on set, she was just relaxed, and I remember the one time she would always go first with the crew went early in the morning, and I wasn't in as many scenes as her, so we'd come in later at times. But when you get her there, and she'd seen, I think it was the scene where they come tell her the news, and she just seen it, and she came and she said to me, great, and in between takes in the cars and the transport, she was just a giving person, and we all felt like we were there. We weren't supposed to be anywhere else, if that makes any sense.
Wow.
Because a lot of times you're on projects, but your focus is split, or you're there for other reasons. But it was a settled space, if I can say it that way. We felt settled, and she was generous. The main thing I remember most about her is the generous. I mean, we were helping her walk, and the crew would pick her up, as Kate said, and her and Pew had a nice relationship because of the smoking, but but she was a generous person. That's the top thing that I remember about her generosity.
I feel like that's what's coming across just from everybody. Kate has mentioned that. Director Lim Hang has also mentioned that that she was a generous person, and I mean, I feel like all of you are so blessed to have gotten to work with her. And then I will move to Ntade Jerry Mufokeng. if you can tell us about the authenticity of the story and just your personal journey with the film.
Sure. I hope I haven't messed up your sound here. I grew up in Lesotho as a little boy.
Yes.
And then I went visiting in Lesotho, and I'm trying to write a book about Lesotho. And growing up in Botabote, the young men went to the mines in South Africa. And there was this red bus that we called Khubedu. And you saw it in Botabote with these Afrikaner drivers who would wait there smoking their cigarettes, and these young men with their blankets, with dreams to come back and bring whatever they would bring. And except for going to the mountain, that was another thing that made them men. And so this whole thing about disappearing into the mines and coming back, disappearing into the mines and coming back. And one day, I guess in the early 2000s, I was at the border gate in Maseru, and I saw this young man holding onto life by a thread. And you could see it was HIV and AIDS. And basically to say the mines had sucked everything out of him. He was just going home to die. And so when you look at Mary's character and her waiting for her son to come back and relate it with death, that's what registered in my mind. But then I visited Lesotho before they put water into Mohale Dam. And I saw these big machines that just keep going around and boring into the mountain and pulling rock out. And the huts on the slopes were empty. And you knew that people had been moved out of their homes. But you see, when you move a home, you also move the graves. Now, if somebody had passed away 30 years ago, what do you move? Can you move the spirit of somebody who's there? Because there isn't much really. You can't separate the soil. I don't know how much of bone is left at that point. And so this whole question of removal from land and the removal of bodies and the removal of spirits and the young men who come home to die or already dead. And so Lemohang is a philosopher. He's a philosopher, and if he can tap a little into his mind and his poetry in the film itself, not just in the language, but in the way in which he tells the story with the images. I got the script, and it was written in Sesotho, and then I got it in English, and it was nowhere near what I heard in Sesotho. And I got into, for them to hear what I had put together. And I just played, and I put it on my tongue. And then Jeremiah got excited. And you know, when you train directors, you always say, don't direct the audition, don't direct the, but he did. And we started playing in there. And somehow I felt, yes, I found the poetry in Sesotho way beyond anything that I could ever have imagined. And so combine the world of the play as I've described it to you with this poetic language. and eventually going to film it in Lesotho. And everything went wrong, but it went right for me because then they came into my hotel room and I did half of my dialogue in the hotel room because of that. And thank God that's what happened. And so when I went on set, yeah, we selected what will go on the screen. Everything else was to be going on with the music and the images. And I think for all of us, I mustn't speak for everybody else. For all of us, it's a film that is touched the raw nerve and gave us the poetry and the history and the story of Lesotho in a manner that is completely different from anything and everything that we have ever interacted with. And I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
And that's why I cried at his casting.
Whoa, you even shed tears,
I
I can
did,
imagine.
I
Because even
did.
in the beginning of the film, I think what carries you through the first few minutes, it's just him playing the Lucifer and how the language itself, it's so poetic. You wanna hear more. It's just
And
it
the
couldn't have been.
register, right? That
It
it's
does.
so deep.
It's so deep.
Like I wasn't. I mean, I think I heard you at that register and Daddy Jerry for the first time on set. Like we hadn't gone there yet in the casting on the casting day, and it was pretty mesmerizing to hear it.
Yeah, you
And,
just
and that register we got in the hotel room.
Yeah.
oh.
And look, I'm a director.
Yes.
But when I act, we all run to our crutches. We do. Until and unless the director actually takes you to the dangerous edge. And just when I thought I got it, Jerry said, no.
Oh my.
How so feeling that Jerry? How so feeling?
We need to push it.
And he kept going down the mine. And he kept going down. So
it
when I
worked.
got on set, he had gotten the register. And it just flowed.
It did. It just worked. It just worked. So I will thank you for that, Ntade Jerry Mofokeng. I will move into Ntade Silas. Just tell us about your impression of the shoot and how it was like working with director Lemohang.
Yeah, I think like Kate said, the shooting was amazing. Each day I went to set, I used to look at these guys from South Africa. I'm not being racial, but most of the crew were like white people in a poor location in the mountains. And then how they pulled it together, even against the harsh weathers of Lesotho, the tough rains in the mountains, sometimes the coldness, because it gets very chilly there. So I think they were doing everything passionately. And like Jeremiah said, his kind of modus operandi was kind of different from, what you are accustomed to, the kind of shooting style that you're accustomed to. And his approach was very different. But I could see that the crew and the cast and even the villagers, they could understand him. We never knew really where he was going to because he was shooting it his own style. Like as an actor who has been in front of camera many a times, sometimes I'll think of shots like, after this master shot, we'll go to maybe mid shot or close up or POV or something like that. And then Jeremiah just broke the rules. He just went his own way. Sometimes you'll feel like you have dialogue, and then you'll want the camera to be frontal so that and he'll say, "Cut! The scene is in the can." Wow.
Like you said, no following logic.
Yeah, so what? I mean, I've been talking, the camera's behind me. So that was brilliant.
Nice.
And working with him, I've known him for many, many years. You know, me and him come a long way. As we are both artists from same country. I don't know if he remembers. He came the first time I really had an encounter with Jeremiah. We had a show some years, more than 20 years ago, something like that. We had what you call the Echoes from the Mountain Kingdom, where we would bring artists from all disciplines, be it music, fine art, poetry, and any performance. And Jeremiah came in as a poet, brilliant poet, my God. And then from there, he worked with Kaiser Matsumian, who's another filmmaker, a brilliant filmmaker, amazing from Lesotho. And then Tumelo Matobako, you know, they formed a frontier that they worked together. They even came to Johannesburg to do some projects here. And all along, I was being informed, and I'll do some, you know, docudramas or documentaries. And Jeremiah this time will edit them on Apple Macintosh, on Final Cut Pro. He'll do very good work. And then I don't know if you remember, he became my actor. There's a PSA, public service announcement on TV that I did. And Jeremiah was performing on it. I was the director. So we come a long way. He's very brilliant. He's very poetic. He's a philosopher. There's one renowned director and a director of photography, cum director now, Tebogo Malope. You know, Tebogo calls Jeremiah a prophet. And now we get to go back to the name from the Bible, Jeremiah. Yeah, no, he's amazing. He's a thinker. He's very deep, and he's very good. And I envy him. You know, just to wrap it up on him, on set, each evening when he rapped around 6 in the evening, when the sun had gone down to the west of the twilight, Jeremiah will walk about 2-3 kilometers in the mountains while we are still rapping. We'll find him on the way, walking, and sometimes embracing the villagers, talking to them, and he'll meet animals coming back from, you know, the veld, from grazing, coming back home, and then he'll walk. He'll meet men on horseback. He'll still walk. And then he used to enjoy those walks so much that I picked it up. I said, this guy, after every rep, he doesn't hop into the car with us. He walks. He gives himself time to think and to look at these amazing, amazing, amazing landscapes. Something that we have never seen, my sister.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. You've called him a prophet, a philosopher. Even Dade Jerry Mufokeng called him the same.
Yeah.
So I will just end off with you, Dade Mahaula. How was working with Lemohang?
It was great. It was great. I enjoy most that it's a connection thing. I felt that as we in the casting, and then he came out and said, "Now I want us to work with each other," and I said yes, after because I felt the same way. It felt different. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt different. As I said, it felt calm. And then fast forward, my first day on set, it was in the dining room, and it was raining that day, and all the actors were arriving, and he sat down with us. And the one thing that he said to me was, or said to us, was, "I want you to be yourselves," and very few directors say that. So say those kinds of things. And on set, he was very engaging, which was great. And what it enabled me to do with my character was, the priest was a very conflicted person. And what I did was, I didn't go all the way to try to be me. I wanted to try to capture the Sesotho that had already been written, so that to create a sort of tension which was inherent in the priest. So he always feels uncomfortable, and that what I achieved in that way could only be given life because of a director like Jerry, because he gave you the space to explore. So that's the most the strongest thing that came out for me.
Thank you for that, and thank
Yeah.
you all for your input with about working with Lemohang. We have
Yeah, I
three
wanted
questions from.
before we move on, I wanted to while we're here, I really would like to thank Nade Jerry and Mahaula and Salas and the rest of the cast, because I was eating from their energy that they brought. That's what sustained me keep creating and keep hoping for better shots, or for a better ways and better approaches and all these ideas when they were wrestling around in my head. But their energies and their presence in this, they made this film happen. So I'm internally grateful for you guys, for your generosity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing,
you, Bud.
amazing,
Thank you.
amazing, amazing. We have three questions coming from the floor, or from our from people who are joining us virtually, and they have question for you, Kate. The first one is coming from Subenati, who says, please share with us your relationship with Lemo from when you two met and how that influenced you working together.
I always say to Lemohang that we are like siblings, because we love each other very much, but we can fight as well. We're both very strong-willed and equally as passionate about the films that we make, and so it makes for healthy arguments quite often. But I mean, like Lemoang said earlier, when we first met, it was at a screenwriter's residency, of which I'm a co-founder, with this project in 2017, and I was fascinated with the project from the first time that I read it in the evaluation process, and it was also kind of something cosmic, like Machaula was describing earlier about just energy, feeling energy. As soon as I met Lemohang, I felt like I had known him forever, or like in a previous life or something. And we lived in residence together while he was developing his project. Many nightcaps together by the fire, many times too many nightcaps. So we got to know each other well very quickly through that process. And when he approached me afterwards to produce, I mean, I was just elated, because I was like, I believe in the project so much. I fiercely believe that the film needs to exist. And he's a brother, so it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have some fun together. So it's it's probably the most meaningful creative collaboration I've had, that we were synchronized from the start. We were very clear about the work that we wanted to create and what we wanted it, where we wanted it to live and what we wanted it to do. And I think there was I can't speak for Lemohang, but there was a lot of, despite the hardships and the challenges of realizing the film, there was always trust there, because I also like to think of us as like the mother and father of the film. And so the film really was like our baby, and the baby always came first. And so everything that we did, whether people thought we were crazy or not, we probably were a little bit, but it was all in the best interest of our baby. So we were just, it was, we were aligned always. And the editing process, I mean, the shoot was very special, but the editing process was really lovely, because I moved Lemohang into my apartment building, And so we were neighbors and spent every day together while we were editing, and it was a really lovely, intimate, fun with a touch of spice, you know, when I wouldn't accept the 5 hour long first cut. So no, it was a joy, and I'm very happy that we're developing his next film together.
Amazing, amazing. I will take two more questions that are directed to you, Lemohang, from the floor, and then that's how we are going to close this session today. I should have started with what Zubenai just said in the beginning. I think the first question was directed to you, but it's something that you sort of touched on earlier. He said, or he or she said, can we first start with the title of the film? What inspired the title? And if we can transition into how your writing process was for the film, what sparked the vision? I think you've touched on those. And lastly, it's from Andrew. Several times it felt like I was watching more like an actual footage of events rather than actors filmed by a crew, grounding the moment more in reality. Was this a conscious choice? And does this also relate to the film's chosen framing and aspect? I think you've touched on those, so you can just wrap it up for them.
Yeah. I think the title. There was a poem that I wrote about it. There was a line that says, "Walk into my mother's womb, and walk into my morgue." So this sort of dualities of the morgue and my mother's womb, and which it was sort of a homage to the land itself. It was a homage to my mother tongue. For years, I've been studying a lot of world cinema, whether it's New Realism or French New Wave, and I lost my tongue. I lost my gaze, and I had to go back to my own mother tongue to create work, to create films. And sort of it took me to go back into my childhood. And that's where maybe many ideas come from, or maybe resonate from with my childhood. So this poem was dedicated to sort of my childhood, and this it made me to look back. This title of the morgue and also of the my mother's womb, it sort of morphed into, this is not a burial, it's a resurrection, because it's this polarities that you have and that are consistent throughout the film. So this title came before even I thought of making the film, was a part of that poetry. In fact, the title itself was a feeling. And then I like this very much because I always feel like I like when the title itself, it's sort of abstract in a way. It doesn't give too much. It's not too concrete, but it becomes abstract. Like the film, I feel like it needs to be something that is clear but yet abstract. And it's almost like you walk into the gallery, that you walk away with things out of it. It's not just one thing. And also it sort of forces you to think of this two polarities, of the resurrection and of the burial. And I think it was communicating well with me as a poem. But and then with time, and then the ideas of the film start to come, and everything start to come together. Yeah, that's the. What's the other question? I think it was answered before about the ideas, isn't it?
The next one was, you mean from Andrew?
Yeah, writing process, no?
Yes. Oh, and if we can transition into how your writing process was for the film, what sparked the vision? But I think you just included that.
Yeah.
And then you have one from Andrew who asked, several times it felt like I was watching more like an actual footage of events rather than actors filmed by a crew, grounding the moment more in reality. Was this a conscious choice? And does this also relate to the film's chosen framing and aspect?
Yeah, we touched on that. Just to say a little bit about writing, it's like I said, when I create work, I really write from a very very subconscious place. It's a very spiritual in a way. How I start to write, or how I even attempt to write. I normally walk. I do a lot of walking. I write when I'm walking. By the time I sit down, the story is already done. So my writing, it's when I'm not writing. It's when I'm walking. I walk a lot. I spend hours walking, and sometimes like I try not to question the ideas. For instance, if you look at the scene with the woman sitting in the ashes and Manto are trying to hold on to the ashes, it's the only thing that is left off, and the sheep just walk in. I don't come from a very technical place. If I went to maybe film school, I'll be very technical about this. What does this mean to me? But since I don't have that filter, for me, everything is sort of allowed. I literally puke frogs and hail and feces, everything on a page. I don't question it. And then there's a time when you start to now become an editor. You start to now shape things up as far as the flow, and then you borrow the now the language of flow, or the language of rhythm, and that's where everything now start to become almost technical. But I still allow myself to stumble upon things. I allow myself to stumble upon the place of miracles in the script, in the process of writing itself.
Thank you so much, Lemohang. This leads us to our, we can conclude the session today. Do you have any last remarks, Kate? Or we can just close it off.
Just thank you, Lidweni, for moderating for us. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Bondadi, for being here. And yeah, Jerry, always a pleasure to see your face. And I'm ready to go back to the mountains. Let's go.
Let's do. Kalesiam.
So much. Oh, I saw something online. Obviously, we know we're having this virtual session because the film will be showing in cinemas from the 21st of May.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, everybody, we're all gonna go and watch it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.